Welcome with me, Nicole Formica-Schiller. Nicole is the founder and CEO of Pamanicor Health AG. She is one of the experts when it comes to disruptive technologies, especially in the area of AI and blockchain. And you may say, well, there are a lot of experts around, but there's basically no one who is able to translate the implications of AI and blockchain into health. Having said that, I would like to welcome Nicole Formica-Schiller. And Nicole, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Petra. Hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to be speaking to you today about AI and blockchain. Tackling the pandemic, is it science or is it fiction? Before we go into more detail, let me ask you one, for some it might be a personal question. Do you recall what you have been doing on the evening of the 26th of January, exactly 1 year ago? I know exactly. I had a family dinner when suddenly my phone rang and the professor called me and he said, Nicole, now it's here. We have an emerging, rapidly evolving situation. And I think you all know what he meant. He meant the first case of COVID-19 in Germany, actually specifically in Bavaria, in Munich. Lab confirmed on the 28th of January. And why did I know this so exactly? Because him and I, we had been watching the situation already the days before and the weeks before, and we had been exchanging more on a private level on how digital tools could help fighting a virus. And you might ask, why did he specifically call me? So let me quickly introduce myself. As Petra said, I'm the founder of and CEO and founder of Pamanicor Health. We are a global advisory firm in disruptive technologies such as AI and blockchain and its implications with a special focus on health. And for us at Pamanicor Health, it's very important that if we talk AI and blockchain, everybody really understands what it means, including its interconnectivity with the global digital transformation. And that's why I'm also grateful to share my knowledge on diverse boards, as well as keep the exchange going with academia in public and as well as an author. Before founding Pamanicor Health, I had been in global positions worldwide, in Europe, in Asia, in Russia, and Switzerland. And that actually gave me the opportunity to get the different cultural approaches, to get to see them at a very early stage, and the very different approaches when it came to digital transformation and the use of digital tools. And therefore, over all the years, there was one question which really triggered me. This was, imagine a world where healthcare is dominated by artificial intelligence, by blockchain, and or data analytics. And we are not as far as you might think. Actually, technology is changing already now every part of our lives. And it's not all negative in a negative way, which sometimes you might think when you read some newspapers. The healthcare industry in particular is no exception. Artificial intelligence, also in some parts blockchain and other disruptive technologies, are already having a revolutionary effect on the industry. AI is for many of you out there, I know, seen already as something revolutionary, for something already, depending on the country you watch us today, from something standard, which can be widely used within healthcare. Blockchain itself, it evokes in some people different kind of associations. The majority of the people, when it comes to blockchain, they still actually more or less refer it to Bitcoins. But blockchain professionals and also non-professionals will know that the situation is much more complex and that blockchain has a lot of diverse applications also to fight the pandemic. So therefore, look at the current situation. We have a global pandemic out there. You all know the numbers, you all see them and you hear them, unfortunately, every day in the news. But beyond the numbers, you recognize one thing on this slide. This is not a US, a European, or an Asian problem. This is a global problem. It's a human problem. And this is the same situation as we already had during the pandemic in 1918, when also more people died in the second wave than in the first wave. So 2021, this is so far the same. So you might wonder, what has changed in the last 100 years since then? Well, we are more digital. And what has in particular changed in the last year since the outbreak of the pandemic, you might now wonder and ask yourself? Well, I would say we are even more digital, at least in some countries and at least in some areas. COVID-19, you also hear this every day in the news, has undoubtedly speed up the digitalization in several parts of the world. For example, we have heard this earlier in a presentation. In Germany, the use of telemedicine did massively increase. People are nowadays way more willing to use telemedicine, and the amount of people has tripled between 2019 to 2020, up to 45%. These are big numbers. Doctors willing to use telemedicine actually moved up from 2017, 1.8% to 52.3% in 2020. So question is, the pandemic changed our focus, and it made us also rethink. It forced us to rethink, in particular, more towards science, healthcare, and digital. This is also what I'm exchanging more or less on a daily basis on my Twitter stream with people, and the reactions you get from worldwide are very interesting, and the input. So a general question always is, so how is the healthcare sector using AI and blockchain to fight the pandemic? What opportunities are there? What are people already doing? What is already real and what is more fiction? So since the start and resulting also from this pandemic, we can see several very promising use cases of AI and blockchain out there. Given the time for this presentation, I will focus just on some few examples, which I find very interesting and very helpful. First, let's start with AI. So there is, for example, an online platform out there for clinical studies. It uses AI to match people who are interested and willing to voluntarily participate in clinical studies related to COVID-19. On this platform, they can find out if, when, and for which clinical study they would qualify, which is, of course, a big benefit when it comes to clinical research, to clinical trials in the whole topic, with regard to the whole topic of let's get to know COVID-19, because let's face it, this is something new for all of us. Another example is a US company. They are using voice-enabled AI technology and proprietary vocal biomarkers for personalized healthcare screening, triage, and continuous remoting of monitoring the health. I mean, many of you know what a biomarker is. For those who don't know, a biomarker is a measurable indicator of the severity or presence of a disease state. Vocal biomarkers are there used to analyze the acoustic features of voice recordings, and so to provide insights into users' health conditions. The way this app or this tool works is that a single voice sample is recorded using a mobile app or a web-based tool, and a cloud-based AI analytics engine provides feedback within a minute or two. And an interesting thing is thinking beyond. What they are testing at the moment is to use a tool like that for kind of what I call back-to-work approvals. So people might be able, via this tool, to record their voice and to get immediately kind of a permit or approval if they can go back to work because all is fine, or if there are serious issues and they should rather stay at home. As I said, this is all in the testing phase, but these are very interesting and promising approaches. When it comes to blockchain, we see, for example, the WHO has developed together with major tech companies, the Hyperledger Fabric Framework-based program IPASA, which is for data transfer and connection with COVID-19. And the goal is an early detection of, for example, hotspots and infectious citizens. Blockchain is also used, for example, in Cyprus. Many of you or some of you might have already heard about that. For example, at what we call the COVID-19 lab. So certain hospitals in Cyprus use blockchain to upload data sets of medical documents and tests related to COVID-19 and to administer medical records. Patients then also have access to this platform, to the blockchain platform, and can share the data with other users on the platform. This is combined with the respective app to make it also easy for everybody. As you can see, these are all examples from different countries of the world, which are all affected by COVID-19. Because COVID-19 doesn't care if you're black or white, if you're from the US or Asia or Australia or elsewhere. It only cares that you are a human. Having said that, this is exactly what AI and COVID-19 also have in common. They both affect humans and they don't stop at national borders. When I was invited at the Data Ethics Commission of the German government, I said at that time, AI doesn't stop at national borders. Who, including me, would have ever thought that this will come true shortly afterwards for a deadly virus that would change our whole society, economy, and heavily affect our health systems, but also would speed up digitalization. COVID-19 has become also a geopolitical game changer. We see this. There's a global race for vaccines, which you also heard earlier during the day in a presentation, with the question, who is getting how many for vaccinations, for which amount, and so on and so on. We just hear the AstraZeneca stories going through the media in the last days. We also see a different amount of vaccinations. There is, depending on the respective country. We see countries which have vaccinated a higher proportion of their populations than the rest of the world. So what is the secret? Many are asking, and there are huge discussions out there. Yes, there might be structural factors, like some countries might be smaller, people have a more positive attitude towards vaccination, and so on and so on. But more importantly, these countries have invested in good digital infrastructure. So now they can process, for example, and centralize large volumes of health data, like shares of immunized people in a given area, and so on, and all this in real time. Healthcare data is then centralized and digitized effectively so that citizens can also use this in combination, for example, to get the right appointment for a vaccination date. What I want to emphasize, the numbers you can see on the slides, and you're all familiar with the numbers, these are just exemplary, okay? But it shows the reality. It shows that COVID-19 does not stop at national borders, and that it's also a geopolitical point. Having said that, we see behind the scenes the global race for data, but also for AI, and in certain parts of the world already for blockchain. Having said that, in particular in Europe, when it comes to the use of data in connection with AI and so on, you all know this. We hear statements where data privacy concerns are raised. With regard to Corona, in particular, when it comes to certain countries like in Asia, and the way they set, for example, up their Corona apps and so on. So people are asking, how is this data gained? How is it accessed? How is it processed? And so on and so on. There's a lot of criticism sometimes out there, but we all know that if we want to make the best use of AI and blockchain and other disruptive technologies, good data and access to good data is needed. AI won't be out there if its algorithms are not trained with data, and blockchain technology wouldn't be nowhere without data. So the question is also whom to listen to as an individual when it comes to disruptive new technologies, in particular in the healthcare system. Shall we listen to politicians, to evidence-based science, or to the digital reality, in particular in times of COVID-19? Well, at least when it comes to some regulations, politicians have, to a certain extent, kind of the last say. So we see different approaches here in the US, in Europe, with a democratic value-based approach, and in Asia, just to name a few. The question is, what is the proper balance when it comes to policy and regulations of these disruptive new technologies? Given the fact that we are in the EU, of course, the EU should bear and take into account democratic values, but also providing a scalable, transparent, and user-friendly legal framework for all stakeholders. And this is a critical balance when we talk about disruptive technologies. Because if that is not taken into account, that will be a recipe, actually, you could say, for disaster for any industry, but in particular for the healthcare industry, which has to compete on a global level, is the biggest producer of data, and has also heavily relies on data. We have seen already, the EU is quite fast forward. We have seen 2018, there was already the European strategy for AI. There was also 2020, the European data strategy and the white paper for AI. And in 2020, already Mrs. von der Leyen emphasized the highly important aspects of AI in her guidelines for her political leadership of the Commission in the next years. For Europe, 2021 is going what I want to call a milestone year, in particular when it comes to AI, and in particular with regard to healthcare, because we will more precisely getting to know what the Commission's approach is towards regulation of AI, alongside also with the input of other commissions like the CAHI, which is the ad hoc committee on artificial intelligence by the Council of Europe. In November last year, which is not so long ago, there was the big announcement during the German Council presidency of the EHDS, which is the European Health Data Space, for working more closer together in the European Union on data and access of data and the whole data strategy. And you might ask, okay, but what is it when it comes now to blockchain? Well, blockchain, here it differs very much. So it differs, what you can already see on the patent registrations already between China, US, South Korea, which are leading in that market. Whereas, for example, certain countries in Europe, Great Britain, France, Germany, and so on, there's still room for improvement. So can the European Commission proceed with their approach to AI in the healthcare sector? Will they be on a winning track, or what will the future be like? Well, there are a lot of questions, and the questions are of course answered by the politicians, but it's also a question for our society. Which system, in particular when it comes to healthcare and to health, in which system do we want to live in? You know, which system with digital tools do we want to create? Well, we all agree that it should not be the thinking in old ways of doing things. Now we have things always done like this. This is the way we're going to do it still in the future. It is about using digital innovation in the best way to fit the needs of the society. And society, let's face it, that's you, that's me, that's all of us. But what will a future-oriented digital transformation look like, including AI and blockchain? And will it truly result in a sustainable healthcare system? This really relies heavily on us. The world is interconnected. You can call it globalized, and you can call it, I would really say globalized, but the world is also small. In particular, when it comes to health, big tech may have their offices abroad from your country, but via your digital devices, such as wearables and others, they are right at your doorstep or even closer in your pocket. So what we will see in the future in the healthcare system is an approach towards a more personalized, patient-centered healthcare system, where wearables will play a big role, and the collection and also the use of data will become crucial. We will turn towards all of us, towards a kind of a digital patient, which does not have to be bad. This is actually a good point and a good development. And at one point, we will be at a stage where there will be an identical digital twin of you created, which mirrors exactly your health being, your diseases, your whole body, which make potentially treatment in the future even more precise, more better, more effective. Having said that, if you're really interested in digital transformation with technologies such as AI and blockchain, it's important to understand that this is not just something you learn or which you use as a buzzword. This is something you have to take to your heart, in particular in a sensitive area like healthcare. Something you embrace with the ambition to make the world a little better every day. For me, this is not a destination towards digital. It's actually laying the foundation for a more impactful transformation to come, in particular for the most sensitive area, which is health. But before we actually, in particular, if we talk about AI and blockchain, need to understand the digital transformation and its implication on our healthcare in its entirety. For me, that's what I sometimes like to call a bit, that's in my digital DNA. And I hope also that after this presentation, it's also in yours. I know that after this presentation, there are questions which you still might have and which have been unanswered, or even better, questions which will come to your mind in the next days. And this is exactly the way we should embrace digital technology, tools like AI and blockchain, not just, but also when it comes to fight the pandemic, questioning and challenging the digital status quo, improving it day by day. Some of the answers you might be looking for, and way more examples than I could outline in the short time we had today, you can actually find and read in my book, which will be published in April this year, which is about AI and blockchain in healthcare and how it did revolutionize the whole system based on Corona. So for other questions, feel free to reach out via social media, via LinkedIn, even now in a Q&A session, and I'm happy to answer to my best extent possible your questions. Thanks for your attention, stay safe, and let us use digital innovation in a way that our future generations can be really proud of us. Thank you very much.
Nicole, thank you very, very much for this super exciting presentation. You mentioned some of the use cases that are already implemented in AI and in blockchain, but you also said how difficult it is to how the different level in the different countries are, well, they are really different, these levels. So one last question, because time is running. What do you think is the major challenge when it comes to implementation of AI and blockchain? Short answer.
First answer, it depends on the region, the mindset of the people, because at the end of the day, Politics can do regulation, tech companies can develop apps, but if the people are not willing to use or to be open-minded to digital tools, then there's not much effect. So that's why we have to get out there, and we have to actually also take the fears, the scaredness of people into account, but also show the benefits. And we should learn from each other worldwide. It's a global race, it's a global competition, but a competition, the benefit is you can learn from each other. So we should also see what the others are doing.
Very good, Nicole. And I think we do have, first of all, thank you very much for this super exciting presentation. Nicole will be available for our questions in the chat.
Yes.
So if you have questions, she will be here. And other than that, I would like to ask you to stay with us and to listen to the keynote of Professor Florian Gebhardt. He will start at 11:05. And in the meantime, stay with us. Nicole, again, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks very much. Goodbye.